But we need to also understand that talking about it from a Hindu versus Muslim angle is perhaps not the best way.
Yeah.
It was an attack by some foreign invaders on Indian sovereignty
and
culture and संस्कृति. तो वो हमारी संस्कृति के ऊपर एक अटैक था and this was a symbolism. Perhaps we of course it has been such a long time, हमें नहीं पता कि उसके तथ्य शायद बहुत ज़्यादा क्या हैं, हो सकता है, पर ये हमें पता है कि एक सिंबोलिज्म होता है जब आप किसी संस्कृति के ऊपर प्रहार करते हैं, अटैक करते हैं, you want to destroy a lot of their important symbols. That is a psychological impact that you want to create. So a lot of that happened.
Yeah. In fact, the thing is that as you talked about, the culture that one want to destroy, basically one wants to impose. The idea is that there has to be some kind of resilience towards it. When someone destroys an institution or a place which is as important, I would say, as a Ram Janmabhoomi, because it's like saying how Bethlehem would be for Christians. We kind of understand that the person doesn't want you to, kind of get into it. But we also have to talk about one very important fact, that the issue is not again Hindu versus Muslim. In fact, there have been Muslims like Wazid Ali Shah, who was the Nawab of Lucknow, who actually batted on the behalf of temple and who actually wanted कि यहाँ पे मंदिर हो. So there have been people again from on both sides who understood that this is an Indic issue. This is an issue which concerns more with the civilizational, I would say, aspect, rather than just, I would say, an interfaith issue that the way we've been looking at.
And there are people from both sides of the spectrum who are trying to make it that, for example, from a lot of people from the right-wing camp, they are taking it as a high decibel victory against against the minority perhaps. And there are a lot of people from the Muslim minority community who are taking it as an attack on their identity, as if the rights of all the Muslims who live in this country were encapsulated in a certain structure. So we need to put these things separate. So that is number one. Chronologically, if you're looking at it, so of course that happened in 16th century. Then for several centuries, both the sides have been engaging in conflict. So that has happened. Then of course in 20th century, of course, I think it went into a completely different direction at the time of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. And then after, when Shah Banu happened, so Rajiv Gandhi did certain things which were, I think, a little miscalculated, for lack of a better word.
I think it was not data back, there was very low perceptiveness around it, and it just happened in haste. Haste would be a good word to use over here actually. That it was not very much well thought.
Well thought, yeah.
And consequences, I think उन्होंने सोचा नहीं कि इसके consequences क्या हो सकते हैं. They just did it for the sake of doing it. Yeah.
Which brings me to another point, that when you're dealing with certain sensitive issues like these, when your religious sentiments are involved, you need to approach these things with a lot more caution. Now, a lot of people have made this argument that after India became a certain republic, it was decided that all the religious structures, वो जिस हालत में हैं उनको उस हालत में रहने दिया जाएगा. Some people make this argument, but at the same time we need to understand कि जो राम जन्मभूमि के ऊपर जो ढांचा बनाया गया या बना हुआ था, वो उससे पहले भी विवादित ही था.
Exactly.
तो आफ्टर इट बिकेम अ रिपब्लिक वो विवादित ही रहा. सो इट डजंट totally cover in that.
In fact, to put a halt to the controversy, शायद British were the ones who actually put a lock and key to it, right? So that they are able to contain the controversy to some aspect. So I don't think so. This started because it was a democracy or someone thought कि नहीं we have to go back. वो शायद जब से, as you said, when मीर बाकी came, वो तब से विवादित ही था. And in fact, I would say 2020 was the final nail in the same controversy where we actually had a decision coming to it. Secondly, as you talked about a lot of far right wingers and a lot of far, I would say, actually both are right wingers in a way. So a lot of Hindu, I would say, believers and a lot of Muslim believers, they're making it about an ego fight right now. I mean, I have seen a lot of posts where I've seen a lot of hardliner Hindus posting about it कि देख लिया जीत हो गई Pakistan चले जाओ and all that. And whereas there are a lot of Muslims who would be like saying things like कि this is not my India, yeah, we don't want Modi because of it and things like that. But again, the thing is, Ram Mandir, I think after a certain point, which is specifically 1992, it became more of an ego war between two religions, which actually, अगर हम root cause को देखें तो it is not. It is something we are together, something जिसमें हम सब साथ में हैं.
Yes, we are actually on the same side, and also another thing that I just wanted to bring up is that a lot of people say that when you go back in history, every structure will have certain historical background, and if you keep digging, you'll keep finding some things. So we can't do that. A lot of people say that. So I think the answer to that is that if there were certain structures of civilizations that existed before us, for example, or in some other part of the world, and if they were present today and they were contending for that, we will have to accommodate their emotions as well. It's not just about the basic digging an archaeological site. We are not, it's not happening in a very mechanistic way. We are dealing with people. We are dealing with people, we are dealing with their sentiments, and we are dealing with religious symbolism. So, of course, if there is the Hindu side, there is the Muslim side in this issue, so we will have to accommodate the religious sentiments. We cannot just take it in a very mechanical way. So that is, I think, one more point that that needs to be discussed and brought out even a little more.
And in fact, Abhi, as you mentioned, this brings me to another point that there are like so many such sites in India where we have mosques today, and I'm very sure mosques were not there earlier, right? It's just convenient कि एक structure already है तो उसको convert कर दिया जाए. No one comes after those. I mean, and that's okay. I mean, I totally bad for it. But the thing is that why is it only Ram Mandir? Reason being, the site holds a certain significance to a certain faith and to a certain culture again. Secondly, the thing is that I just want your, I would say, comment on this, Omer, that I was reading about it, that as like talking like a Hindu, if I tell you, according to Hindu faith, आप अगर किसी मूर्ति की स्थापना प्राण प्रतिष्ठा करते हैं, so you can't even move it an inch. In fact, अगर you've seen नवरात्रि या you've seen गणेश चतुर्थी, so whenever वहाँ प्रतिष्ठा स्थापना होती है, to mark the end of it, आप उसको थोड़ा सा move कर देते हैं, and you say कि अब जो है हमने इसको conclude कर लिया है. However, I think in Islam lets you move the entire structure from one place to another, and a 5-acre land has already been given where the entire structure can be moved. I think it's just like a few kilometers away max to max. So what do you have to say about it? Because like, is that true? Does that happen? Are there examples where mosques have been moved, the structures have been moved?
I would say yes, there are certain examples of that. And when we are talking about historical significance, so if that place is believed to be the Janma Bhumi of Lord Ram, तो जो जन्म स्थान है, जो जन्मभूमि है, that cannot be changed, right? That will of course remain where he was born, तो वो जगह वही रहेगी. Now talking about mosques, there are certain examples in an Arab world, for example, in Saudi Arabia of all places, where there are examples of structures being shifted a bit here and there for construction of flyovers or highways or some roads or some societies. So there are precedents to that, and I think it's upon the minority community itself to take up the mantle and produce those examples in good faith between the two communities. Because at the end of the day, what is required is a better equation, a better social fabric for the nation to thrive. I think that is what all the historical figures whom we revere in the Hindu civilization are even today. So all of us want to move in a certain progressive direction. So I'm glad that this happened in a whatever way it happened, but at least it culminated, and we can work together to build a better society. So I think that is what we should work on instead of just looking at the historical facts and just cribbing about them forever. I think let's just move towards a better future.
You said progressive people. मुझे उससे याद आया कि कुछ लोग अपने आप को बहुत progressive समझते हैं and their idea is कि ना मस्जिद बनाओ ना मंदिर बनाओ hospital बना दो.
That is not progressive. I think that is very childish.
I think that's escapism.
Escapism.
Because you don't want to basically stand by one side, so it's easier to just talk about one thing which is like.
I think that's a very escapism, a very parochial way of dealing with it. It can be taken as I think it cannot be taken seriously in whatever context. It has to be dealt with. So the issue is actually very serious. So it has to be taken seriously. We cannot entertain certain viewpoints like that because that shows complete disconnect from the roots, from what this civilization is, what this nation is, how we have reached here over centuries and millennia. So I think that is...
It's like whataboutery basically.
Whataboutery, absolutely.
Also the thing is that 2 points here. First is like अभी when we were talking, so हमने देखा कितने excitement से लोग जो है राम मंदिर की प्राण प्रतिष्ठा का wait कर रहे हैं. I would want to see a similar, in fact, excitement when the mosque is also built.
Absolutely.
Like everyone coming together because it creates a very good environment. It's a very positive environment for us. And I think religion has been the social lubricant since forever. And it should be used as one for that matter. Secondly, the thing is that what I think Omer has been also kind of iterating is that I view this entirely as an issue where some alien forces came to India and they wanted to suppress us. Similarly, what happened in the case of Maldives. I mean, Maldives was an external threat, and all of a sudden we saw entire, like, irrespective of religion, we saw everyone coming together, talking about it. In fact, talking about some Middle Eastern channels which shall not be named. So, Indian Muslims were really defending that yes, whatever India is doing is right. So, I pretty much see it as a similar issue where...
it is actually, it's quite similar when in the face of external threat you come together. So, I think that it is one event like that, and I think this Pran Pratishtha ceremony, returning of Ram Lila in the temple, it is actually a festive, it's a very festive occasion. It's a festival for all 1.4 billion people that are living in this country.
Yeah.
Right. There is a lot of misconception, for example, when it comes to a lot of Muslim intelligentsia, unfortunately, it is taken as when the Mughals, for example, there are leaders like Aurangzeb, there are leaders like Babur, who actually went to certain lengths to desecrate this civilization, right? So now we need to understand that the Indian Muslims of today have no direct connection to these figures at all, because the connection can be of two types. Either you are genetically linked to a historical figure, or you are ideologically linked to a historical figure. There are only two ways. Now, genetically, of course, Indian Muslims are not linked to Babur because he was not an Indian. He was not born here, right? So we have no genetic link whatsoever. Now we cannot have an ideological link because, of course, the secular republic, the modern secular republic of India, talks about equal rights for all Indians, of all people, right? But these people like Aurangzeb and all, they had a very extremist point of view. So, of course, Indian Muslims of today cannot be linked to them ideologically as well. So, we have icons like Dara Shikoh, for example, among Mughals only. When we talk about Mughals, it's not just the kings.
I would want more places to be named after him.
After him.
Yeah.
So we have Akbar, for example. So we have icons like Akbar, we have icons like Dara Shikoh.
Yeah.
So to them, Indian Muslims of today can be ideologically linked because they had a more syncretic view of how this civilization can prosper. So this is certain, because if we are saying that we have nothing to do with the problems that existed, with the desecration of temples, with jizya, of course Indian Muslims cannot be held responsible for them. But at the same time, Indian Muslims will also have to say that we have to leave the narrative that we ruled on this nation for 800 years or 500 years or whatever, because we did not. all the ancestors, most of the ancestors of Indian Muslims today were as common people as the common Hindus.
And
Right.
that also brings me to a point. I have a lot of friends who actually, Agrawals back then and are Ansaris now. In
Yeah.
fact, I think we have more of genetic commonality than we have, the Muslims would have with, I would say, Mughals for that matter. That also brings me to a point that since we understand that genetically and ideologically there has been no commonality, I think the Hindu far right also needs to stop, I would say, kind of accusing and I would say abusing the Muslim community all the time. If someone is trying to put out their point, I would say, and specifically I'm talking about comment boxes because that's exactly where all this facade happens all the time.
Happens, yeah.
So don't do that. I mean, it's okay if they have a point, if you have something to do, it's fine. But do understand that it's not about completely about you going out and saying ki dekha main to jeet gaya, main to jeet gaye. No, your community is like below us or something like that. It's nothing like that, as we are like again reiterating again and again. So since they are not the ones to be blamed, just try to understand and don't I would say catch each other by throats basically.
Exactly. So I think that's how we would like to conclude this also, because so basically it again comes down to the same fact that in this high voltage drama that is uncovering in front of our eyes, I think it is important that we take it with a bit more sensibility, and it is not taken as a victory of a certain political outfit or a certain religious community, because that again translates into friction, which is not good for the nation. So I think that is the step by step